What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the most recent drama that celebrities are facing, if you could even call it that, after this year's Met Gala. So people are fed up with the upper class and the wealth disparity between them and regular people, and with celebrities who are constantly being put up on a pedestal. And so this week, after the Met Gala, a lot of people have been taking to blocking celebrities in an act that they're calling a digital guillotine, or a Digitine, if you will. And it's also being referred to as Blockout 2024. So we are going to get into all the details of that and what exactly started this whole thing. For example, so far I've heard Kim Kardashian has lost over 3 million followers, but we're going to talk about what exactly went down and what started all of this. Honestly, for a while, I have seen people compare the Met Gala to the Hunger Games, specifically to the Capitol in the Hunger Games. If you have seen the Hunger Games, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but I'll put a couple of pictures up here of what that kind of looks like. And this year in particular, the comparisons could not have felt more accurate. A lot of people have always made videos saying me watching the Met Gala from District 12. But yeah, that comparison has really felt a lot more accurate this year, especially when this year, on the day of the Met Gala, another attack on innocent people in Gaza took place. It's also really struck a chord with viewers how celebrities will pay $75,000 for a ticket to the Met Gala to essentially fluff each other's egos and
soak up each other's awesomeness,
while the regular person is at home struggling to keep food on the table and make their rent. Wealth disparities have honestly never been more prevalent than they are right now, especially in the age of social media, where it is so blatantly obvious how vastly different the wealthy and celebrities live compared to the average person. And it just goes to show how disconnected they are from the struggles of everyday people. The disparity between the upper class and everyone else really shows during times like these, as noted in this news article here. Between a cost of living crisis, heavy-handed police dispersal of pro-Palestine student protests ahead of Israel's promised military assault on Rafah, where nearly 1.5 million displaced Palestinians have fled to, the opulence on display at the Met Gala was the last straw for thousands of activists and observers. All of this led to a movement that has been called Blockout 2024, or the digital guillotine, or Digitine. They live off of our attention, posted one user on Twitter. If they don't have any, they cease to exert their influence. These people have all the opportunity to make change in this world, said a user on TikTok, and instead of using their platform to talk about shit that matters, they use it to make themselves money. That's it. Fuck them, block them. And really, the first catalyst for this whole movement was a TikToker by the name of Haylee Baylee, or Haylee, and she posted this video to TikTok.
Let them eat cake.
Who took the bomb?
The audio is from the 2006 movie Marie Antoinette, based on the real Queen of France, Marie Antoinette. If you don't get the significance of that line, here's a little brief history lesson for you. Marie Antoinette was the Queen of France during the French Revolution, and "let them eat cake" was a line that is famously credited to Marie Antoinette. There is no actual proof saying that she said this, but the whole message behind that line still stands. "Let them eat cake" was allegedly Marie Antoinette's response to being told that her starving subjects had no bread or food, cake being far more expensive than bread. She was basically saying, oh, they don't have any bread? Well, let them eat cake then, because she was so far disconnected from the struggles of the everyday person in France at the time. There isn't concrete evidence to suggest that Marie Antoinette actually said that or not, but the quote is incredibly famous, and the same can be said now about these celebrities being so disconnected from the struggles of everyday people. And the theme of the Met Gala was also very dystopian, and kind of played into this whole idea as well. It's called The Garden of Time, which is based off of a story, The Garden of Time by J.G. Ballard, and this is just a little synopsis basically on what that is about. I actually did read the story. I listened to it on YouTube as well. I'll link down below what I listened to because it was very interesting, and I did like the story. It was interesting. But I think the themes of it tie in a lot to how people are feeling, and I find that very bizarre the way that this all worked out. But The Garden of Time by J.G. Ballard is a short story that centers on Count Axel and his wife, who lived in a grand but decaying mansion overlooking a vast, beautiful garden. The world outside their estate is undergoing catastrophic change, with encroaching chaos and advancing barbarian horde threatening their peaceful existence. The key element in the story is the garden itself, which possesses mystical properties. Within the garden grow unique flowers known as time lilies. Each time lily has the power to hold back the advancing horde and postpone the inevitable destruction of their world by turning back time. As the story progresses, Count Axel plucks one time lily after another, each time buying them a bit more time and delaying the horde's approach. However, as the horde draws closer, the number of time lilies dwindles. Despite the Count's effort, the garden gradually becomes depleted. Eventually, the Count is left with one single time lily. Realizing the futility of their situation, he plucks the final flower, and the story ends with the couple watching the horde finally breach their garden, symbolizing the end of their world and their inevitable fate. The story explores themes of time, inevitability, and the transient nature of beauty and life. It presents a poignant reflection on the human desire to hold on to fleeting moments moments in their eventual acceptance of the end. And in this story, this count and his wife are living in like opulence and luxury and essentially keeping that for themselves as long as they can and really holding on to that. At one point, the symbolism I think was very clear with that, where the count heard screams of the horde like coming towards him, but then his wife starts like playing an instrument at the time, and it, like he says, it thankfully drowns out the sound of that. And I think that really does symbolize like the people up here turning a blind eye to the struggles that are going on around them, and like the music of that drowning out the screams that he was hearing.
When he first looked over the wall, the approaching rabble filled the distant half of the plain, stretching across the horizon in an unbroken mass. He thought he could hear the low, fragmentary sounds of voices carried across the empty air, a sullen murmur punctuated by cries and shouts. But quickly he told himself that he had imagined them. Luckily, his wife was at her harpsichord, and the rich, contrapuntal patterns of a Bach fugue cascaded lightly across the terrace, masking the other noises.
So yeah, I just think the way that that's phrased is very interesting because, I mean, like they said, it speaks about inevitability and the horde approaching, and he just wants to like bury his head in the sand and forget about it. But another creator named Lisa P did a great video about this that put into words eloquently how the whole thing felt and why a lot of people were feeling this sort of like disconnect and ickiness surrounding the Met Gala and like Haylee Baylee's video specifically, but just sort of the whole thing.
Let them eat cake.
As a woman who loves fashion and is usually very interested in what everybody's wearing at the Met Gala and usually like waits all spring to watch the Met Gala, this year was the weirdest dystopian hellscape of a performance I have ever seen in my life. I didn't even watch the red carpet of the Met Gala, and that's usually something I find much more interesting than the Grammys or the Oscars, etc. And I couldn't watch it because it's obscene. And it was probably always obscene, but there is something like very Hunger Games-esque, and I know everybody's been making that comparison, but it is so Hunger Games adjacent. It's probably always been this obscene, but like the juxtaposition of what's going on in the actual world right now with the Met Gala, it is just so stark because of what's going on. Like there is an income inequality. There is a wealth gap that is bigger than it was in the French Revolution. So the tone deafness to post something like this is beyond. Not to mention, I looked up the actual theme of the Met Gala this year, and it's actually based on this story that has a lot to do with like class inequality and these like super rich people trying to fight off this horde of angry peasants, basically, with magic and time turning, which like is a little on the nose for also like right now. It's almost like this year they were like, yeah, we know what we're doing, and we want you to know that we know what we're doing. And I'm not saying that everything has to be about everything else. Like, I appreciate art. I love fashion. I think you can have an appreciation of like beauty in a sense that like art is important even in the darkest of times. However, this is not art for art's sake necessarily. This is an elaborate show of wealth. And literally with everything that's going on in Palestine, it's gross. And it felt gross this year. It just, and everyone's still slayed, but like the whole event felt.
Okay, 100% agree. I mean, she kind of touched on a lot of what I've already said, but I think that the way that she just put that into words was very concise, more so than I can be. But I will also share the first video that I saw talking about the Digitine or the digital guillotine, because this is what sort of started it.
Let them eat cake.
It's time for the people to conduct what I want to call a digital guillotine, a digitine if you will. It's time to block all the celebrities, influencers, and wealthy socialites who are not using their resources to help those in dire need. We gave them their platforms. It's time to take it back, take our views away, our likes, our comments, our money, by blocking them on all social media and digital platforms. And I think the first person that we should all focus on is Haylee here. Haylee Baylee, for your ignorant decision to attend the $75,000 ticket Met Gala and recite "Let them eat cake" while you have done nothing with your 10 million follower platform as people are starving and dying, we sentence you to the Digitine.
Vive la révolution.
Okay, so that's sort of the explanation and where that idea started from. And as you could see there, At that time, Haylee Baylee did have 10 million followers, and she actually even made a video that night saying like, thank you guys so much for 10 million followers and you're the reason I'm at the Met Gala. And now she's back down to 9.9 million. It definitely feels like an appropriate consequence for the action. But the reason why people are blocking and not just like not following celebrities, because a lot of people don't follow a ton of celebrities. I myself know that I don't follow very many, if any at all. But blocking takes it a step further because, as we all know, and I'm sure if you are on social media at all, you have experience, but all social media platforms these days have algorithms where they feed you content from people you don't follow. So you can be scrolling and come across people's content that you don't follow, and your view and engagement is still counting for the time that you are spending on that video, regardless of if you're intentionally consuming it or not. But blocking celebrities does stop their videos from coming up in like your recommended and for you pages and explore page on Instagram and stuff like that. So that's why blocking them is kind of taking it a step further and making sure that you are not inadvertently supporting and funding the type of content that they're making. Now, Haylee did make a video apologizing, and I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I will play a few important clips because it is a 9-minute video and I feel like this video is not going to be that long. I don't want to make you sit through the whole thing, but we'll point out a few key things that she's saying and I'll include the clips that I feel like are relevant. But one thing Haylee said in her apology, which really struck a chord with a lot of people, including myself, was that she said she didn't realize that it would be taken in such a way.
The audio that I used for that particular video, and first and foremost, before I say anything, I need to apologize. I am so sorry that I chose a sound that you guys could ever possibly feel was malicious in nature. If I had thought for even 1 second that the sound would be received that way, I never ever would have used it. It's been used by big and small creators alike with no negative feedback or no negative discussion in the comments. The sound choice truly had no deeper meaning. I never would have chosen a sound on purpose to highlight wealth disparity or elitism. I never even thought it would be taken in that way. My dumb self just used an audio that I thought was viral and trending and that people recognized from the Marie Antoinette 2006 movie. Think that much into it, and for that I am so sorry. I did not do my due diligence.
And the thing is like that is kind of exactly the point. She didn't realize how it would come across, and that's kind of what people are saying the issue is that she's so far disconnected from like the struggles and life of everyday people that like she didn't even realize that this could come off as tone deaf. And just like Marie Antoinette saying let them eat cake, I mean the whole point of that is that it is extremely tone deaf and disconnected, and she didn't even realize. So Haylee was kind of driving the point home that people were sort of saying like that's the issue, you didn't realize why that's insensitive, whereas most people unfortunately don't have the option to even turn a blind eye on the issues of today because we're all living it. People also had an issue with Haylee's apology because in it she really was trying to convey herself as just a normal girl. She made statements about how like she wasn't even invited to the actual Met Gala and she was just there beforehand.
I wasn't elite enough to even be invited to the Met Gala because I'm not elite. I'm a normal person. I was not invited by Anna Wintour. I did not hold an actual invitation to the Met Gala. I was involved only as a host, meaning that the moment that the last attendee left the hotel, I went home and I watched the Met Gala coverage from my couch with my friends. I was working at the Mark. And I literally wasn't even invited to the Met Gala, so security would have definitely dragged me out. I was at the Mark, which is on 77th Street, and the Metropolitan Museum is on 82nd Street. So that's about as close as I was allowed to get to the Met Gala.
She didn't even pay for her dress. It was made for her with her friend who's a designer.
The dress that I wore was made by hand by a friend. Mark is one of my nearest and dearest friends. I met him back when I was modeling and we just stayed friends. So then when all of this red carpet stuff started happening for me, I reached out to him and he started to help me and make dresses for me by hand out of literally the kindness of his own heart. I have never paid him a cent. He has never paid me. We just work on the dresses together because we find it to be really fun. Every single dress I've worn on a carpet this year has all been made by hand by Mark. I have not paid anyone anything. I haven't bought dresses. I haven't paid designers. Mark is the only person that I have worked with. And he's one of the only reasons I've even been able to do what I've done this year, because I wouldn't have had the dresses to go to these events if it hadn't been for him.
Again, people are like, this is so tone deaf because you don't even realize how these things you're saying are not relatable to the average person. She's trying to be relatable and quirky and say like, I wasn't even invited to the Met Gala. I was just there to speak beforehand. Most people aren't even invited to the Met Gala to even just make content beforehand or stuff like that. It's still a huge disconnect from what's relatable to most people. And also Haylee saying that her dress was like gifted to her by her friend who's a designer and they worked on it together. That just further solidifies how much different she is from the regular person. Like, she doesn't realize that that's not normal nor relatable at all, and she's trying to use it as like, oh, woe is me, I'm just a regular girl. And this whole relatability piece to her apology led to people going back in her content and content made by her, and people started bringing forward an apartment tour that she did of her $17,000 a month New York City apartment.
We're inside a $17,000 a month apartment in Soho.
Let's check it out.
Which it's massive. It is literally bigger than like my house times 3. Hello, that is just not relatable to anyone. And I think that's the issue sometimes too with these type of people trying to make this relatable content is, if anything, sometimes I feel like it would be better if people just weren't relatable. Like, you're not relatable, so just admit it. Stop trying to seem like you are the same as everyone else when your viewers do not have $17,000 apartments. Your viewers do not have friends who are designers gifting them designer dresses to wear to the Met Gala, even to a pre-event of the Met Gala or an after party at the Met Gala. And Haylee also like clearly is making a lot of money from the content that she makes. I mean, her apartment alone is evidence of that. Trying to seem relatable honestly just made things so much worse. And then she goes on to talk about something else which has sparked a bigger conversation about world issues, and the main one that people bringing up right now is Palestine, obviously. And Haylee says she's not educated and doesn't have the background needed to discuss that in a meaningful way.
Because the things going on in the world today are weighing heavily on everyone's hearts. Innocent men, women, and children are dying. People do not have access to food and water. People are being kicked out of their homes. There are so many things going on in this world that are just wrong. I know that this situation is very complex. I also know that I don't know the right thing to do or say a lot of the time, which leads me to the question everyone is asking, which is, why don't I talk about it? And it's simply because I am not informed enough to talk about it in a meaningful and educational way. I do not have the background knowledge to educate or discuss in a meaningful way. I grew on social media as a comedy creator, and I love comedy. I love making videos, and that's how I gained my platform. But that doesn't mean that the second I started gaining followers on the platform that I automatically knew the right thing to say when it came to world affairs or wars or disputes or death or destruction or crisis. I still am just that same girl who wanted to post her first comedy video a year and a half ago on TikTok. But I do know that as somebody with a big platform, it is my responsibility to always try to be a positive voice and to always try to better myself and be a good example for my audience, because I never want to let them down. At the end of the day, I want to make sure that my words are used for good. And when I don't think that I'm informed enough on a situation, I try not to comment until I am confident that I am actually informed and the things that I'm saying are true. Just because somebody has a following doesn't mean they're necessarily the right person to speak on the issue, especially if they are ill-informed or uninformed on that issue. I do all of this on my own. I don't have a fancy team that selects my sounds or edits my videos or posts my videos or writes the caption. I don't have an editor. I post everything myself. Everything that you see was probably filmed by either me or my boyfriend, edited by me, and then posted by me. And sometimes I am dumb and sometimes I mess up. Sometimes I don't correctly anticipate how people will react or feel to something, and for that I am truly so sorry. It breaks my heart that a video that I posted has added to any of this. It breaks my heart that a video that I posted has made anyone feel less seen or less heard. So again, from the bottom of my heart, I am so sorry. You do not have to accept my apology, but just know that I am so sorry, and I really hope that this sheds a light on all of these issues and opens up a very important discussion. At the end of the day, I am glad though that an unintentional mistake has now been the catalyst for discussing wealth inequality, world crisis, and will hopefully bring about the leaders whose voices should be heard in this. And again, I'm sorry. It is my job as a content creator to apologize whenever I make anyone feel unseen or unheard, even if it's unintentional. And just know that no matter what, I love you. Thank you for being here. And thank you for watching this whole video if you made it.
This is something I see influencers say all the time when they're called out for not talking about things. Oftentimes it leads to them just taking a break from social media because they can't handle the hate that they're getting, which I mean, whatever, do you. But in my opinion, not being educated on it enough is a bit of a cop-out. It just seems like a cop-out because I understand the fear of saying the wrong thing when you do have that many eyes on you. Like, I would never devalue that and say that there's no concern there at all. I completely understand the anxiety and fear that you would have, being worried that you're speaking on something you don't understand and maybe you're gonna say the wrong thing. Another good thing that these people could do with their platforms is, instead of speaking on it themselves, use your platform to uplift the voices of people who do know. Like, you can reshare content from people who do know and are educated, and you're still using that. You're leveraging your platform to elevate the voices of people who are more educated than you, and that would be perfectly acceptable because no one is expecting influencers to say all the right things. The issue that a lot of people have called out in the comment sections for celebrities that won't say anything is that you want to say you're not educated enough, whatever. They're saying they haven't been able to research enough to even reshare something or to share a GoFundMe or a donation link to help people out. Like, I feel like saying you don't know might have been an excuse in October, but like 7 months later, what's the excuse for not knowing? There's nothing that is preventing these influencers from gaining knowledge aside from just that they simply don't want to, or that they don't want to alienate any part of their audience by being on the right or wrong side of an issue. There's like a quote that says, like, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything, or something like that. Okay, so it's a quote from a song, and it's, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And that is definitely so true, and I feel like that's kind of the same thing. Like, you can't be neutral with everything, and honestly, if you are at some point, being neutral in the face of adversity is choosing the side of the oppressor, and that is also something that I did not make up. There's a creator that I love on TikTok named Dutch, and he put into words really well how I've been feeling, and I think how a lot of people have been feeling on these influencers who like refuse so deeply to speak up, even when they're basically being like begged to say literally anything.
It's insane to me the amount of energy and anger that certain creators bring when they're asked to talk about issues, right? Like, I don't have to talk about that. That's not my job. It's not my responsibility as a platform or with the creator, with the influence. I'm not educated. I'm not expert on it. Oh my God, the amount of time it took you to talk about how you shouldn't have to talk about nothing. You could have stepped to the side, learned something, and made a video talking about what people asked you to make a video about. But then the response to that was, I'm not just gonna say what people want me to say. I'm not an activist. I don't know. I'm on it again. Nobody thinks you're gonna be the next Noam Chomsky or Toni Morrison, babe. Trust and believe, nobody thinks that. And quite frankly, people don't want you to be an activist. They just want you to do this thing called influence. It's crazy. Category is influencer. That's your job, to influence. And just like all jobs have responsibilities, nurses have to keep their patients safe. Teachers have to teach their students. Influencers have to use their platforms responsibly. That's your job. You have millions of people listening and learning from you and engaging with you. So why wouldn't you just want to take a little bit of time out of all that time to say something? And I know why so many of them are angry, right? They say it's above their pay grade, it's not their responsibility. And listen, influence and an influencer, right? Like, as somebody who also has a union job, this is hard. This is hard, right? Our job is a blessing, okay? The things I have to bargain for in my union job compared to this is what we're gonna complain about. Sitting down in your comfortable home, watching a video, learning about a topic, and then having to make a video about it. And honestly, you don't even have to make a video about it. You could just repost experts. This is what you're gonna complain about? It's embarrassing, okay? And listen, this job has a bad enough reputation as is. You know that. So get it together and start using your platform.
I just quickly want to say this video was posted a couple months back, so this was not in response to Haylee or anything like that. This was more so just the same thing that's been going on. Different influencers, many different influencers, getting called out and speaking out saying they shouldn't have to talk about things. I think that it's fair for people to be upset when influencers they follow won't use the platform they have for good when it could do so much good. No one is expecting influencers to become the next best activist, or that they're going to speak out and all of a sudden the whole world is going to change. Like, I don't think anyone thinks that, and no one is being unrealistic like that. Influencers speak out about something and things get done. That is just a fact. That's the world we live in. The flip side of that, I obviously don't think that anyone, any influencer, celebrity, etc., has to speak out or has to reshare information or whatever. Like, you work for yourself, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do, obviously. But I also think that if you benefit from your influence and from your viewers watching you, supporting you, and the opportunities and income that you get is as a result of them, you don't then get to turn around and be upset when they're calling you out, wishing that you would speak up on things that are important to them. Final thoughts on the Blockout thing. I don't know how long I see it lasting, if I'm being honest, just because people really do idolize celebrities a lot. Like, in my mind, Taylor Swift that comes to mind in Swifties before you come for me. I do not hate Taylor Swift, but I see the way that people idolize her, and I think it's really easy for people to post about the blockout and block celebrities and stuff and call people out until it comes to their fave, and then all of a sudden it's crickets. That's just my opinion. Let me know what you think down below. I would love to hear from you, and with that, I will see you in the next video. Bye!